Just a year ago, the Utah Jazz were a team that weren't looking forward but focused on the present, given the presence of both Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. But after finishing as just the 5th seed in the West and getting bounced out in the first round versus the Mavericks, it became relatively clear there just wasn't a path to that current group winning a championship, so they decided to do what most teams should but rarely do in that position. It started with them trading their 3-time Defensive Player of the Year center Rudy Gobert to the Minnesota Timberwolves in what might go down as one of the most one-sided trades in NBA history. The Jazz obviously gave up Gobert, that we need to keep in mind was on a contract that paid him $46 million in 2026. The Timberwolves gave up Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverley, Walker Kessler, Jared Vanderbilt, first rounders in 2023, 2025, 2027, 2029, and the right to swap first rounders in 2026. We'll get to how this has worked out for the Jazz in a sec, but for the Timberwolves so far, I wouldn't say it's worked out exactly to plan, as they currently sit as the 9th seed, a game below 500. Now, after trading Gobert, it was only a matter of time before dealing their franchise player Donovan Mitchell, and just ahead of the season, they ended up reaching a deal with the Cavaliers to send Mitchell in exchange for Colin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, Ochai Agbaji, first rounders in 2025 and 2027, and the right to swap in 2026 and 2028. At the time of the deal, it seemed like a really solid price for the Cavaliers looking to take the next jump, and for the Jazz, an okay haul. It didn't seem too amazing compared to the Rudy Gobert trade, but I don't think I'll ever understand how that trade ever happened. Now, after these big deals, it looked like the Jazz were headed to a full-on rebuild, and with a prospect like Wembanyama at the top of the upcoming draft, it was no surprise to see them given one of the lowest preseason win totals. But then to start the season, the Jazz looked good, like 10-3 good. Obviously, this caught everybody off guard, and while most expected them to fall back down to mediocrity as the season went on, they were now in a weird spot when it came to this rebuild. Now, they've definitely cooled down since that stretch, but they're still putting together a pretty competitive season, currently sitting as the 8th seed in the West. It's very likely, as long as we don't see a major roster shakeup, this team's competing in the play-in. I don't really think anyone's expecting them to make a run past that, but nonetheless, this is a much different season than almost anyone expected coming into the year. Now, it's not hard to see why they're so competitive. Probably the most glaring reason is the breakout of Lauri Markkanen. In 90% of seasons, Markkanen would be running away with the most improved race. If it wasn't for SGA taking the jump to possibly being an All-NBA first-team member, there is no question Markkanen would be bringing it home. He spent the last 3 seasons averaging between 13 and 15 points a game with up and down efficiency. Now this year, he's come out and become one of the better forwards in the league, averaging 25 and 9, shooting, and you're hearing this correctly, 52% from the field, 41% from 3, on over 7 attempts a game, as well as 87% from the free throw line. I honestly think he's become one of the most entertaining players to watch. At 7 feet tall, he's got a scary combination of size, which he uses to his advantage, and wing skills. I'm really not sure it's a coincidence that this breakout is coming a year after going to the small forward position in Cleveland, taking on his biggest on-ball duties to date. In fact, I actually think his success might have a major effect on the roles we see other rebuilding teams give out to their frontcourt players. Now, while it was extremely clear the Jazz were after draft compensation more than anything, almost on accident, there's a really solid group around Markkanen. They've got solid shot creators with Sexton and Clarkson. Most of his scoring ability has faded away, but they still have a two-way playmaker in Mike Conley. Great shooting with Beasley and Olynyk, a Swiss Army knife in Jared Vanderbilt, a really solid rim protector in rookie Walker Kessler. Obviously nothing that blows you away, but it's a beautifully constructed roster that just lacks the top-end talent to really have deep playoff run hopes. But that could change rather quickly. Right now, they're in a relatively good position when it comes to their books. Mike Conley at this point is extremely overpaid, getting over $22 million a season, but he has just 1 year left on his deal. They just gave Colin Sexton a new contract after the Mitchell trade, so he's locked up for the next 3 seasons, but as of right now, it's not looking like the best of deals given his play. He's going to make $19 million in 2026. Malik Beasley has a $16 million team option next season, which the Jazz will probably decline. Olynyk has 1 more year on his deal, getting $12 million. Walker Kessler is obviously just a rookie. Ochai Agbaji, obviously just a rookie. Jared Vanderbilt is locked up for just 1 more year, getting $4.7 million. Clarkson has a player option that, given the season he's having, will be declined. And lastly, their biggest asset right now, Lauri Markkanen, is on an incredible contract as he's locked up for the next 2 seasons, getting around just $17.5 million a year. So what's pretty interesting is the fact that if they give Clarkson a new deal, they could practically have the exact same roster next season. But I highly doubt that's going to be happening. This team needs to make their mind up and make their mind up quickly. Given the success we're seeing from Lauri, are they going to try to remain competitive, or are they going to do the rebuild we all expected? Right now they're sitting on one of the biggest pools of draft picks in the entire league. They have 3 firsts in 2023, They don't have any next season unless they're inside the top 10, but once again in 2025, they've got 3. In 2026, 2. In 2027, 3. In 2028, 2. And in 2029, 3. With that kind of projected influx of young talent, I think it's relatively clear the best route begins with a Lauri Markkanen trade. As amazing as he's been, the question has to be, are the Jazz going to be able to form a top-end group in the time frame of this deal? Right now it's at the point where there's enough time left that he's extremely valuable in a trade, but there isn't enough time to really consider him a long-term piece of this franchise. But it seems the Jazz have a slightly different opinion, as leading up to the deadline, they're willing to listen to trades for anyone not named Walker Kessler or Lauri Markkanen, something I truly think could be a massive mistake. For one, we don't even know if Markkanen is going to be able to hold on to this level of production, and it's just a given that his trade value is going to drastically change deeper and deeper into this deal. Now, to play devil's advocate, I think there is something to be said about trading away your best player right after you just traded your 2 best players less than a year ago, especially when you have more than enough draft picks to really not have to embrace the tank. Okay, so it's not looking like they're going to be trading Lauri Markkanen, but I think there's no denying it is a massive, massive mistake to go past the deadline without making some moves. Whether it's Malik Beasley, Olynyk, Vanderbilt, or even Jordan Clarkson, there's a lot of guys on this roster that likely won't be around for too much longer and could be major impact players for contenders across the league, and they don't come with much commitment. I'm sorry, I know embracing the tank is disappointing for some fan bases, but this is not your usual draft class. Wembanyama is one of the greatest prospects the league has ever seen. Choosing to chase the play-in over the lottery is a flat-out mistake. They've got a really solid opportunity here. Right now, they have the most middle-of-the-pack record in the NBA, but they're legitimately a strong losing streak away from putting them in solid position to land a top 5 pick in this draft, which guarantees them one of Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, Brandon Miller, or one of the Thompson twins. Without making some serious roster moves and continuing to have the mediocre success they've been having, they'll likely stare at a situation where they have 2 mid-first round picks coming from them and the Timberwolves, as well as a late first rounder coming from the 76ers. They'll go into next season looking at a relatively similar situation. Yes, they'll have a solid group of future picks, but once again, won't be bad enough to land a top pick in the draft, and they're going to be just a year removed from Markkanen hitting the open market. If they ended up landing a top pick in this draft, things become a lot more clear. It actually makes sense to start focusing on the present, as in the event of that selection working out, they have the assets to form a group that Jazz fans can actually see a path to top-end success. Now, there's definitely a lot to be excited about in Utah, but I truly believe they sit in one of the weirder positions in the league. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of what we saw from the Thunder back in 2020, a team that had just traded away its 2 best players for massive hauls, but in the process, formed a pretty respectable roster that made it to the playoffs. They played it right though. That offseason, they would trade away guys like Chris Paul, Dennis Schroeder, now Horford, for additional assets, and now just a couple seasons later, are on a steep upward trajectory, and future success feels inevitable. Danny Ainge right now should be trying to do his best Sam Presti impersonation. Now, regardless of what they do, the future is still bright in Utah, but no top free agent is coming there. The draft is going to be extremely important, and while yes, as we've said many times in this video, they have all these picks, most of them are coming from the Timberwolves and Cavaliers, who don't project to be sending top 10 picks anytime soon. The one pick that's in their control is going to be their own. This season, it's looking more and more likely it's going to be late lottery at best. It's also looking more and more likely that this team has no plans of tanking, meaning next season, they might not even have a first round selection. These spots are tough to manage. You don't want to tear away your locker room, just trading away everyone constantly due to on-paper value, but I want to know what you guys think. I'm a believer in someone like Presti's approach. If I'm Ainge, I'm looking to send Markkanen for solid players still on their rookie deals, but don't rush a trade. It's fine to wait to the offseason. Given Clarkson's contract situation, I'm trading him for what I can at the deadline, which still should be a relatively solid price. I'm buying Mike Conley out of the rest of his contract, or trading him if that's an option. I'm prioritizing giving guys like Agbaji minutes, focusing on draft position to close out the season, and now you're in an even better spot to start a rebuild than you were coming into the season, which is crazy considering the returns you got for Gobert and Mitchell. Everyone has a different belief, but I think it's become extremely clear holding on to mediocrity is one of the biggest mistakes in the league. Almost no one has made it out without a rebuild. The Blazers, the Wizards, you get the point. The power of committing to a rebuild is valuable. I think a good example is the Magic. They held on to the Vucevic era way too long, content with being the 8th seed. But then they finally made the deals with Vucevic and Gordon, and now they sit with one of the brightest futures in the league. It's kind of wild how just one player, in this case Lauri Markkanen, can put your team in such a weird spot. Without a trade, you can make a pretty valid claim that receiving him in the Mitchell deal was actually a net negative given his impact on draft position. Pretty crazy, but I want to know your guys' thoughts. If you guys liked the video, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.